Hey there. Do you dare? If you're into true crime, the paranormal, mysteries, and everything in between, check out Do You Dare? It's a podcast where siblings Emily and Kian Dare dive into the cases that fascinate and unsettle them. They take turns picking the stories, true crime, ghostly encounters, unsolved mysteries, and share all the details with each other and you. Plus, you'll hear the occasional cameo from Emily's dog Kylo and his squeaky toy. If you're looking for something intriguing, creepy, and a little bit fun, give Do You Dare a listen wherever you get your podcasts. And remember, come back next week, if you dare.
Research and recording of Canadian creepies happens on the shared land and traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties. A key treaty governing this territory is the Dish with One Spoon Agreement. This treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee people binds them to share and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, settlers, and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. We all share the responsibility of ensuring the dish is never empty, meaning we must take care of the land and the creatures we share it with.
Welcome, wanderers, to Journey Down the Crooked Path, a place where the stories are stranger, the shadows stretch longer, and the things that go bump in the night might just be listening. I'm Amanda Joy, your guide into the eerie, the forgotten, and the downright bizarre. Here, we step off the well-lit roads of Canadian creepies and venture into the murky corners of history, folklore, and the unexplained, where the whispers grow louder and the truth is never quite what it seems. So let's take a deep breath, watch your step, and whatever you do, don't look back. Once you start down the crooked path, you never know what might follow.
I want you to think about the last time you heard a story that started with, "You're not going to believe what happened to my coworker's friend." It's never the person telling you the story, right? It's always someone just a few steps removed. They tell you about a weird call coming from inside a house, or a figure standing on the side of a completely dark highway. And you listen. Your chest tightens up just a little bit because even though it sounds impossible, there's a tiny voice in the back of your head wondering, what if? Those are urban legends, and they don't just appear out of thin air. They're not just ghost stories meant to make kids at camp jump. Every single one of them has a birthplace. Every single one started with a real person, a misunderstood piece of news, or a deep fear that an entire community was trying to process. Someone took a real piece of history, added a rumor, and passed it along until the truth dissolved. Okay. It's late October, and if you've ever been to Vancouver in the fall, you know exactly what this feels like. It's that heavy, bone-chilling Pacific Northwest rain that clings to the air like a curtain. Imagine you're the driver, cutting through the dense, towering, old-growth forests of the Pacific Spirit Regional Park. You're on University Boulevard, headed right towards the University of British Columbia campus. It's past midnight. The road ahead completely is swallowed by a thick, rolling fog coming off the water, and your headlights are barely punching through it. The only sound is the rhythmic, hypnotic slap of your windshield wipers against the glass. You are completely isolated, until your headlights catch something on the shoulder. At first, you think it's just a shadow or a trick of the fog, but as you get closer, your heart hits your throat. It's a person. Standing right at the edge of the asphalt is a young woman. She is completely alone. She's wearing a light-colored dress, maybe white or a faded yellow, and she's absolutely drenched. Her hair is plastered to her face, and she is shivering so violently that you can see her shoulders shaking from inside your dry, warm car. She has one arm extended, thumb out, looking directly into your headlights with an expression of pure, desperate vulnerability. Now, every modern instinct you have tells you to keep driving. It's late, it's dark, but In the mid-1960s, a different time, and she looks incredibly helpless. You can't just leave her out there in the middle of a storm, so you slam on the brakes. You pull over to the gravel shoulder, the tires crunching to a stop, and you unlock the doors. She doesn't hesitate. She opens the back door and slides into the rear seat, and immediately, the temperature inside the car feels like it's dropped 10 degrees. You look in the rearview mirror to ask her if she's okay, but she's just staring straight ahead. She doesn't make eye contact at all. And she handles the situation with this strange urgency. Without saying a single word, she reaches forward and hands you a scrap of paper. You look down at it. Written in shaky handwriting is a residential address just a few miles ahead. You tell her, okay, no problem, I can get you there. Again, nothing, just total silence in the back seat. You assume that she's probably just traumatized or cold from the storm, too cold to speak. So you shift back into drive, pull onto the road, and navigate the slick, winding streets, watching the road ahead. Every few minutes, you glance up at the rearview mirror. You can see her silhouette back there, sitting perfectly still in the dim light, staring out the side window into blackness. Finally, you pull up to the address. It's a quiet, ordinary house. You put the car into park and you turn around in your seat and say, all right, we're here, but the words catch in your throat because the back seat is completely empty. There's no one there. The doors are locked from the inside. The seat fabric isn't even wet. It's completely dry, as if no one had been sitting there at all. Your heart is hammering against your ribs. You stumble out of the car, your knees shaking, and you run up the steps of the house, pounding on the door because you feel like you're losing your mind. And an elderly woman opens the door, looking tired and heavy with grief that she's carried for a long time, and you try to explain. You stammer out the story about a girl in a light dress on University Boulevard who gave you this address. And the woman just sighs, smiles sadly, and says, I know, that was my daughter, but she can't come home. She died in a car crash on that exact road, this exact night years ago. I mean, could you guys even imagine standing on that porch and hearing those words? Your brain would try to rationalize it. You'd think it was a prank or a cruel joke, or maybe that you were just hallucinating from driving tired in the fog. But the thing is, this isn't an isolated incident. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, stories like this started popping up all over Vancouver. It wasn't just one driver, it was dozens, and they all described the exact same girl on the exact same stretch of University Boulevard. But when you actually trace the timeline, there are no police records of a fatal hit-and-run on University Boulevard involving a girl in a light dress. There is no record of a grief-stricken mother waiting at an address in Vancouver for a daughter who never comes home. The story is a myth, but it's a myth that splits into two very specific local versions right at the University of British Columbia campus. In the first version, she's trying to get to that residential house. But in the second version, the one that's whispered about by students in the dorms, she isn't trying to go home at all. She slides into the back seat completely silent and hands the driver a wet piece of paper. And written on that paper isn't a house address. It's the address for the old University of British Columbia main library. The rumor was that she was a student who had gotten into a massive screaming argument with her boyfriend while they were driving to the library on a rainy night. She stormed out of the car and tried to walk the rest of the way down University Boulevard in the dark before a car struck and killed her. This is where the campus lore twists into something a bit more unsettling, because according to the student rumors, she doesn't just flag down anyone. The lore specifically states that she almost exclusively targets single male drivers. Some versions on the campus tale say that it's because she's looking for her boyfriend, eternally searching that dark boulevard for the person who left her out in the cold. Other, darker whispers around the dorms claim that she's looking for revenge, trying to lure male drivers into a state of shock that causes them to lose control of their vehicles on the slick, winding curves of Marina Drive. Now, Back in the 1960s, the UBC campus was basically an island. It was physically cut off from the rest of Vancouver by miles of unlit forests known as the University Endowment Lands. Public transportation out to the university at night was sparse and unreliable. So if you were a student trying to get across the sprawling dark campus after a late study session, you didn't have very many options. Mostly, you stood on the gravel shoulder of University Boulevard or 16th Ave, threw your thumb out, and you hitchhiked. It was a daily normal part of campus life. But at the exact same time, the late 1960s brought a massive cultural shift. Communities were experiencing a growing underlying anxiety about the safety of young people, specifically young women, out on isolated roads alone. I mean, my mom would tell me stories about how she would hitchhike as a teenager and carried a screwdriver in her purse just in case.
You. Yeah, you. Still haunting the same old fast fashion? Time to dig up something better with Back from the Dead Goods, a Canadian small business where forgotten threads get a second life and sustainability meets spooky. This isn't just upcycled clothing. It's resurrected fashion with an eerie edge. Handpicked, reworked, and revived, every piece is as unique as a ghost story whispered at midnight. And because you're a part of the Canadian Creepies family, you get an exclusive deal. Use code Canadian Creepies at checkout for 10% off. Find them lurking on Instagram, Etsy, and Poshmark. Links are in the episode description. Give your wardrobe a second chance at life, if you dare. This episode is brought to you by Fable and Frame Creative. Fable and Frame was born from a simple belief that every life holds a story worth telling. Not just the big moments, but the quiet ones too. The laughter you didn't plan, the love that feels familiar, the chapters that make your story unmistakably yours. At Fable and Frame, photography isn't about stiff poses or perfect smiles. It's about capturing what it felt like to be there. Whether it's a wind-swept elopement, a generational portrait, or the heart behind a small business, every session is approached with care, clarity, and a deep respect for the story being told. Because your life isn't ordinary, it's a fable, and it deserves to be framed like one. You can learn more or book your own chapter at fableandframecreative.com. Looking for your next obsession? The Creators Collective Podcasts is your gateway to the dark, the chilling, and the downright fascinating. We're a community of independent podcasts with one goal: to share the best in true crime, paranormal tales, folklore, and unexplained mysteries. Whether you crave cold cases that won't stay closed, haunted histories that refuse to be forgotten, or stories that make you sleep with the lights on, there's a show waiting for you in the collective. And when you join us, you're not just listening to one podcast. You're stepping into a world of creators who love this stuff as much as you do. Check out the Creators Collective today. Follow the link in our show notes to discover your next favorite podcast. We'll be waiting for you. Let's take a moment during this break to talk about something that matters. Something that doesn't get to be background noise. The Anishinaabe-Moan word, Nikinagana, means we are all related, and we are. But relationship isn't just about words, it's about responsibility. Canadian author Naomi Klein once said, "It is not enough to say that we live on Indigenous land. We have to act as if we do." And one way to do that is by supporting Pay Your Rent, a grassroots mutual aid initiative that offers direct material support to Indigenous organizers across this land. It's not charity, it's rent. For those of us who aren't Indigenous to this place, it's a way to show up differently, to redistribute some of what's been taken. The Pay Your Rent Fund started as a one-time request for help in 2018 and grew into a nonprofit called Nikinagana. Your monthly or one-time donation can help provide food, hygiene supplies, housing support, and resources for Indigenous-led resistance and community care. So if you've ever said, "We're all related," ask yourself, are you being a good relative? Visit payyourrent.ca and find out more about how you can be part of something better. Now, back to this case.
Driving through those dense pitch-black forest roads in heavy Vancouver rain was a genuinely tense experience. Visibility is terrible, the roads are slick, and traffic accidents were a constant hazard. So while the ghost itself might not be real, the vulnerability was. And it's also just a local face on a massive global family tree. The story of the passenger who disappears from a moving vehicle is widely considered by folklore experts to be the ultimate urban legend. In fact, it is the exact story that launched an entire modern study of urban legends back in 1981, when a scholar named Jan Harold Brunvand published a book titled The Vanishing Hitchhiker. Before his work, people just thought these were weird, isolated local ghost stories. But when folklorists started looking at the bigger picture, they realized something incredible. This exact story has been told for centuries, all over the world, seamlessly updating itself as human technology evolved. Long before anyone was picking up hitchhikers in a Ford or a Chevy, people were experiencing the exact same phenomenon on horses and wooden carriages. The earliest known version of this legend dates back over 400 years ago to a 1600 Swedish manuscript written by a priest named Jon Klent. In his account, the traveler is a horse-drawn wagon who picks up a lonely girl on the road. She rides with him, speaks with him, and then suddenly vanishes into thin air from the moving wagon. By the 1800s, the story had spread across Europe and North America. Travelers in horse-drawn buggies would report picking up a young woman who complained about the cold. The driver would wrap his heavy wool blanket or jacket around her shoulders to keep her warm. But when the buggy arrived at the destination, the woman was gone, and the borrowed jacket was found neatly draped over a headstone in a nearby cemetery. Her headstone. When the automobile took over the roads in the early 20th century, the legend simply adapted to the machine. The horse-drawn carriage became a car. The wool blanket became a varsity sweater or a trench coat, and the graveyard became a dark highway shoulder. The story has traveled everywhere. In the United States, it morphed into the famous legend of Resurrection Mary in Chicago. In South Africa, drivers along the N9 road report picking up a Uniondale phantom. In the Philippines, taxi drivers swap terrifying warnings about a lady in white on Beltane Drive. Every culture takes the exact same basic skeleton of the story and dresses it up in their own local clothes, names, and landmarks. It proves that the human need to tell a specific story isn't simply connected to a specific road, a specific city, or even a specific century. But if you look closely at the description of the girl on University Boulevard, the pale skin, the light coat, the white dress, you realize she shares a striking resemblance to a completely separate, century-old piece of folklore, the legend of the Lady in White. For generations, cultures all over the world have shared a story about a specific type of apparition. It's always a woman, always dressed in pale or white clothing, whose spirit is bound to a single specific location, usually a bridge, a cliffside, or a dark stretch of woods, and it's always after experiencing a sudden heartbreaking tragedy in life. Centuries before cars existed, people were reporting sightings of these tragic pale figures wandering castle ruins and old pathways. But as human technology evolved, the modern world forced them to adapt. As we paved over old forests and built massive highways, the ancient Lady in White stepped out of the woods and onto the asphalt. She traded the castle gates for a dark highway shoulder, transforming her from a medieval ghost to a modern phantom hitchhiker. The hitchhiker urban legend has been documented all over the world and across Canada as well. University Boulevard isn't the only road where these spirits have adapted to the modern highway system. If you travel east to Alberta, deep in the winding valleys of Crow's Nest Pass, locals tell stories about Highway 3A, running between Sentinel and Coleman. There is a pitch-black stretch of road flanked by the famous rows of giant poplar trees, known as the Seven Sisters. For decades, drivers navigating the bitter winter storms out there have reported seeing a young woman walking the shoulder, completely exposed to the freezing cold. But the moment a concerned driver pulls over and opens the car door to help, she vanishes instantly, leaving absolutely no footprints in the fresh snow. Further east, out in the prairies of Saskatchewan, the legend takes on a very different form on Highway 12, just north of Saskatoon, and the Petroska Bridge. On rainy, foggy nights, drivers report a man in dark, outdated clothing standing on the roadside near the river crossing. He actually climbs into the vehicle, sitting in total silence, and then completely evaporates from the seat right before the car crosses the bridge. Even in Ontario, the exact same phenomenon haunts a historic intersection outside of Owen Sound, known as Black Horse Corner, where Highway 6 and Highway 21 meet. Long before cars, an old 19th century tavern stood on that corner, and today, drivers still report seeing a lone traveler gesturing for a ride in the dark, only to disappear into the ditch the second the car slows down. Whether you are driving past the old campus trees on University Boulevard, navigating the freezing winds of the Crow's Nest Pass, or cutting through the dark prairies of Saskatchewan, these stories all leave us in the exact same place. They prove that no matter how much our world changes, no matter how fast our technology moves, our deepest, most primal anxieties stay the exact same. We just build bigger roads and we find new ways to carry those fears with us into the dark. The Phantom Hitchhiker isn't just a story, it's a mirror. It forces us to confront the inherent vulnerability of a lonely highway, the fragile trust that we place in strangers, and the unsettling voice in the back of our minds every time we travel alone at night. So, the next time you find yourself driving down a dark, empty road in the pouring rain, and your headlights catch a lonely figure standing out on the shoulder, keep your eyes moving, because you never truly know who or what might be waiting for a ride. Thanks for joining me on this eerie journey through Canada's darker corners. If you love this episode of Canadian Creepies, be sure to follow Valerie on Instagram and TikTok at Canadian Creepies. She's the one behind the socials, sharing behind-the-scenes stories, creepy photos, and sneak peeks of upcoming episodes. And if you're craving even more haunted history and twisted folklore, be sure to check out my other podcast, Down the Crooked Path. You can follow the show on Instagram and TikTok for even more haunted history, mythical madness, and spine-tingling storytelling. Come say hi, share your own creepy encounters, and help us keep the weird alive. Until next time, stay curious and stay creepy.